Most of the free agents that we have coming up are older guys, including, guys like Jari Evans, who really has exceeded our expectations when getting re-signed. I know we got Paul Kruger, who we'll probably let walk. Tim Lolito, will we re-sign him? That's a question mark. Kuhn, which has become a fan favorite. Maybe he'll get re-signed, maybe not. So we'll have to see where it goes. I want to segue into a little treacherous waters because I've just been enjoying ruffling Saints fans' feathers. Not because Saints fans are, dumb or stupid and I'm so much smarter than them. That's definitely not the case. But because I think there are certain players that don't get enough credit or they get over credit. And there's two players that I want to bring up in that type of argument. I want to get Brian's opinion because I have a feeling that he's got an opinion on one of these guys. But the two that I'm going to bring up are Mark Ingram and Brandon Cooks. Everybody knows my stance on Ingram, but I'm going to say a couple of things that's going to rub a little salt in some wounds. Not many people are aware because Ingram didn't get a lot of touches, but this past Sunday, he gained enough yardage to have his third in a row season with 1,000 yards or more offensively. He's the first Saints player to do this since Marcus Colson did it a few years ago. And here's the thing that most Saints fans aren't going to like to hear. Pierre Thomas never did that. Pierre Thomas, his entire career, had 2 seasons where he gained 1,000 or more yards for the New Orleans Saints. And let's throw this out there. He also ran behind 6 Pro Bowl offensive linemen and 2 All-Pro offensive linemen. Not that I'm necessarily saying Ingram's a better running back than Thomas. They're 2 completely different types of back. I only say that to say this. We have been trashing, well, not we, because everybody knows I'm an Ingram apologist. Let's just be honest, say what I am. But we treat Ingram like he's this bust and waste of a pick. But name me a single running back who has put up the numbers that he has. And keep in mind, his first 3 seasons in the NFL, he ran behind Pierre Thomas. So it's not like he was, toting the rock every game and just underperforming. He had a very good back in front of him that he had to wait behind. Since his emergence, though, where he was the number 1 guy in a Sean Payton offense, please tell me what more can you expect from a running back besides 1,000-yard season every year in total yardage? Because Sean Payton's never going to have a 1,000-yard rusher. He's going to have a 1,000-yard season back. That's a good back to me. And the second is, will Saints fans quit trying to think, believe, and play like Brandon Cooks is a number 1 receiver? He's not. You got a number 1 receiver called Michael Thomas. He's got the size, the athleticism to run the intermediate and middle routes and slants that Cooks just can't. He will, and he will do it semi-well, but there's a reason that Michael Thomas his catch percentage is so much higher than Brandon Cooks, because when you have a wingspan and a body, you do a little bit better than just having speed and quickness, and that is not a knock on Cooks. We're putting these lofty expectations on this guy, and then we're getting irate when he doesn't get targeted against the Rams. But look what happens when we do target him against the Lions. And most of those, basically every pass that got thrown to him at the Lions game was a good, solid pass. So I'm not saying we forced the game to him and caused us to lose. But Saints fans, pull back on the reins a little bit. You act like we got Antonio Brown already. Let him develop, see where he goes. And then I want to hear what Brian's got to say, because I just know he's been holding back opinions for 5-10 minutes.
I don't know how you knew it, but my goodness. You know how there's the phrase, you don't want to rain on somebody's parade? Let's scrap that for a second, because I'm not just going to rain. We're talking about a Category 5 storm is about to happen on a parade.
Oh, man.
Okay. First of all, let me backtrack a little bit before I even get on Brandy Cooks. And let me start by saying, I listen to you and Nate both, and Nate is my guy. So I'm trying to be about as respectful as I can when I say this. I listen to you, both of you guys, sit there, talk about the Saints possibly getting the top 10 pick. With all due respect to both of you brothers, what the hell have y'all been drinking? That has never
I
been
said if the season ended today. I didn't say they were going to get it. I said if it ended today.
Okay, I'll slightly take the comment back a little bit, but it's the idea of the Saints getting a top 10 pick. We all know that's not what the Saints do. The Saints, they have 4 games left, and we know what the Saints are going to do. They're going to
look. I still say they're going 7-9.
Yes, even at the 7.
It's lucky. It's the lucky number 13.
Exactly.
That's always the lucky number 13 pick. Always.
Yep.
The Saints win just enough to knock themselves out of the top 10, so they can just make sure they don't get a top 10 draft pick for some odd reason. So my best guess in these last 4 games, they'll split. They'll probably win the one against Atlanta, and they'll probably win the one against Arizona. But likely, they'll lose both games to Tampa. But, well, we'll see what happens. I mean, hey, you never know. That's why they play the game.
Let me just say this, just to play devil's advocate. Even if we end up with that pick, if we look at the last 4 years, how we've done in the first round, we've honestly done pretty well. I mean, and you could go back even to 2011. I mean, because we're talking about guys like Cameron Jordan, Kenny Vaccaro, Brandon Cooks, Andres Pete, and Sheldon Rankins. So it's not like we've done bad at the middle of the lineup there.
No, and I'm not going to knock the idea of who they picked. Now, their draft classes in over the last 5 years have been, by and large, they've been abysmal. But as far as what the Saints, where the Saints will pick, we all know what the Saints do. They win just enough to not get a top 10 pick. Secondly, I want to hurry up and bring up before I jump on Brandon Cooks is the idea of the Leonard Fournette thing. Number one, Saints don't draft LSU. We all know this because we scream every year for them to take a guy from LSU. Lyle Collins would have been a great one, but we always scream for them to pick a guy from LSU, and they always disappoint because it's, for some reason, although it may be 70 miles down the road, the Saints are hell bent on saying we're not picking guys from right there. The Saints don't have one of the largest scouting units in the NFL. They pretty much are a small group. But you would think it'd be really easy to get a scout to go maybe 70 miles down the road and say, you know what, those guys right there are pretty good, let's get one. Nah, that's not what they do. And as far as the Leonard Fournette thing is concerned, on the second point I don't want to make about that is that it's what Rev has been saying probably, for as long as I can remember, being the Ingram apologist that he is. I don't think the Saints need Leonard Fournette. And it's not that he's not a luxury. First of all, I think Carolina's going to get him, which is going to totally throw everything off. But it's the idea that I don't think the Saints need Leonard Fournette, especially because, let's just say for some odd reason, the Saints had Adrian Peters, who I think Leonard Fournette will be best compared to. It doesn't matter what running back you have if you're not going to use them properly.
Right.
Mark, by and large, what's he now? Definitely top 4 in Saints history for running back.
Number 4, yeah.
Saints don't use him. Sean Payton over the last maybe 4 or 5 weeks has just decided, you know what, after I benched him, that guy's pretty good. Let me try giving him the ball a little bit more.
Yep, you're right.
Whenever we wake up, whenever Sean Payton wakes up and realizes he's Sean Payton, I can't get that guy the ball. I got to let Breeze throw 50 times a game. And Nader, you know well as anybody that, you guys are the first I've heard, over on Overtime Sports Talk that came up with the idea. Dudes throw over 40 passes a game. Saints usually lose.
Yep,
so
you're right.
With that being said, let me get on Brandon Cooks real quick. I've been waiting to eat at this dude for the longest time. The notion that he would complain about targets, catches, blows my freaking mind more than you would ever understand, simply because he's on pace to match career numbers. Usually what Cook does when he's healthy, 10 touchdowns, roughly about 1,000 yards, somewhere around a neighborhood of 70-plus catches. That's considered a good season for most number 1 guys, not your number 3 guy. And in case he hasn't noticed, he's the number 3. Michael Thomas is your number 1 option. Willie Snead is your number 2 option. Brandon Cooks is the number 3. I don't know when it became in his head he was the number 1 option. Maybe it was last year when the Saints had no one else but him. But if you pay attention to it, the Saints had more than one option last year. Willie Snead almost had 1,000 yards, and so did Ben Watson. That lets you know it wasn't all Brandon Cooks by himself, which really makes me mad when I think about it. And the idea that it should have been a good thing if the Saints could score 49 points and you not even be targeted. That means the next week, what's Detroit going to have to do? Hey, you know that Michael Thomas guy? He's pretty good. Let's put our best cornerback on him, and let's try to, let's cover the underneath stuff, which would have left Brandon Cooks one-on-one. But everybody in the city of New Orleans, hell, the United States knew Brandon Cooks was going to get targeted more this week, which makes me mad at Sean Payton, simply because I've never seen him acquiesce to appease a player. Never seen him do it. Not in the 10 years this man has been coached has he ever allowed a single player to say, give me the damn ball, and he said, yes, sir, right away, sir. Brandy Cook. Cookie, if you want to be sweet with him. Cookie had 9 targets. 7 of those he caught. The other 2, one was almost intercepted, the other one was intercepted. The Saints forced the ball to him way too much. And yes, I know Drew Brees threw the interceptions for all those that are screaming at your units that you're using right now, your computers, your phones, whatever. Yes, I know Brees threw the interception. Make no mistake about it. It was all because he was forcing the ball to number 10. And the reason why he forced the ball is because Drew tends to take a liking to somebody on the team. That's his little brother. Remember what he said about Jimmy Graham the entire time? Jimmy's my guy. Drew was damn near in tears for a year after Jimmy left. And now here comes Brandon Cooks, another guy just like Jimmy. What do you want to do? What did he do when Jimmy was a wide receiver / tight end? He force-fed him the ball. Triple coverage? Nah, I'm still throwing it. That's exactly what took place again. So in my opinion, Brandon Cooks maybe keeping that in-house would have been the best idea, although it would have been selfish. But to tell the entire world, and by the way, he didn't back down off those comments. In fact, if you listen to his comments, Sean Payton's comments, and then the Ian Rappaport story, it all makes sense. Brandon Cooks' agent is starting to try to see if he can get feelers on a trade because Brandon wants to be Antonio Brown. Can't be that if you're in the Saints offense. So it was Brandon Cooks' agent, and if you pay attention after Sean Payton said it's garbage, that's just agent talk. There you go right there. So if you listen closely, Sean Payton gave you what happened. Brandon Cooks' agent set out feelers to see if anybody's interested in Cooks and how they can get it started because according to Sean and the Ian Rappaport report, Brandon Cooks' talent may be better used elsewhere. So for all those who are saying Brandon Cooks isn't going to get traded because the Saints shouldn't want to trade him, what if Brandon Cooks wants to leave?
And I know it was for different reasons, but, Kenny Stills certainly had some really good showings, and that was a totally different reason why he got sent away. But if you had a production like him and you're willing to send him away, if you had production like Jimmy Graham and you're willing to send him away, I don't think anybody is, invulnerable. I will say this. Cooks I don't know him very well as a person, and I've only talked to Cooks very short amount of time. We're talking less than 2 paragraphs worth of talk I've had with him. So I've got no way to judge his character besides what everybody else sees on social media. It doesn't seem to line up with his MO, just doesn't seem like who he is. If that is the case, though, I really don't want to wave goodbye to him. But come on, I mean, right now, I'm a stats guy. Everybody knows I'm a stats guy. Michael Thomas, in terms of receptions and targets, right now, Michael Thomas has 69 receptions on 89 targets. So that's good for 77.5%, which in the NFL, that's a pretty high number. That's good. Brandon Cooks, however, 58 receptions, 84 targets, which is good for right around 66%. That's not bad. I mean, that's better than most wide receivers in the NFL. And for a number 2 guy, that's phenomenal. But if you've got a comparison and you're looking at one guy, 77.5% of my throws get completed to this guy and 66% get completed to this guy, just from a logic standpoint, where are you probably going to be directing the ball more? And that just goes back to what I've tried to teach through Who Dat Confessional for weeks now. There are different types of receivers. Cooks is a flanker. Michael Thomas is a split end. Your split end is your number 1 guy. He is reliable. He is the new not-so-quiet Storm. He's very loud. He's very vocal, and I love that about his personality. And you got to feed him. And that's not knocking Cooks because Cooks is the only player the Saints have on offense who can blow the top off for 98 yards on a reception. Nobody else can do that. Snead can't do it. Fleener certainly can't do it. Cadet can't do it. The only person who can do that big type of in-the-back dagger play is Brandon Cooks. So let's not knock his talent. I know you weren't trying to knock his talent.
And in all honesty, what it kind of feels like, he's been on the Saints for 2 years, and then, a guy comes in as a rookie and is outplaying him, and it seems like he's kind of hating on him in a sense, because he has, way more receptions than him and way more yardage than him, or whatever the case may be, way more touchdowns, obviously. But I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of feel